explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the U.S.
And I will be here at the WION headquarters, getting you all the action from the universe of sport. All that you need to know about your favorite teams and players, right here.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of. A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA. Join the conversation.
Good morning, Asia. Good evening, America. You are watching World DNA with me, Jyotsna Kumar.
And I'm Hem Kaur. On the show today, Israel's parliament has banned the United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees, that's UNRWA, from operating in Israel and East Jerusalem, despite objections from the international community. And this comes as Israel and Iran accuse each other of endangering peace in West Asia in a heated exchange at a UN meeting called after Israel attacked Iranian military targets. What happens going forward? Will there finally be a ceasefire deal? That's something that we'll discuss on the show today.
Right, and also on World DNA, the Pentagon has said that U.S. will not impose new limits on Ukraine's use of American weapons if North Korea joins Russia's war. This as NATO said that North Korean military units had been deployed to the Kursk region in Russia. Now, the North Korea deployment is fanning Western concerns that the 2.5-year conflict in Ukraine would widen. We bring you all the details on that, but first the headlines.
Israel's parliament approves bill banning the main UN aid agency in Gaza from operating in Israel and East Jerusalem, despite objections from the international community.
Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu says he has not received proposal for a 2-day truce in Gaza, but says Israel was mulling proposed talks on hostage release deal after Mossad chief met mediators in Doha.
Pentagon will not impose new limits on Ukraine's use of American weapons if North Korea joins Russia's war. As US claims North Korea sent 10,000 troops to train in Russia.
Now, there's 6 people injured in Russian strikes on a Ukrainian city of Kharkiv. A UNESCO protected building also hit.
President Joe Biden cast his ballot in the U.S. presidential election, voting early in his home state of Delaware.
Armies of India and China complete 80 to 90% disengagement at Dipsang and Demchok in Ladakh. Process includes removal of all types of infrastructure and troop pullback.
Manchester City and Spain's midfielder Rodri wins Ballon d'Or after winning silverware for both club and country. Vinicius Jr.
In a top story on World DNA, Israel has banned the United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, from operating in Israel and occupied East Jerusalem within 3 months.
This despite objections from the international community. Israeli parliament passed the bill with 92 votes in favor and 10 against it. UNRWA chief Philip Lazarani condemned the decision, saying it will deepen the suffering of the Palestinians. The move brought criticism from several countries, including the United States, Britain, and Germany.
They really play an irreplaceable role right now in Gaza, where they're on the front lines getting humanitarian assistance to the people they need it. There's nobody that can replace them right now in the middle of the crisis. So we continue to urge the government of Israel to pause the implementation of this legislation.
In every war zone, every refugee camp, the United Nations is a beacon of hope. And so it's a matter of profound regret that the Israeli parliament is considering shutting down UNRWA's operations. The allegations against UNRWA's staff earlier this week were fully investigated and offer no jurisdiction for cutting off ties with UNRWA.
The U.S. Department also condemned the lack of aid reaching northern Gaza, stressing that Washington would not accept this situation.
This after the Israeli military intensified its operations in northern Gaza. Palestinian health officials said an Israeli strike on a street in central Gaza's Nusrat refugee camp killed 10 people and injured 20 others.
Now, meanwhile, Israel said spy agency Mossad chiefs returned from talks in Doha with his CIA counterpart and the Qatari premier, where they discussed a new framework for a Gaza hostage release deal. Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi on Sunday unveiled a proposal for a 2-day truce in the Israel-Hamas war that would include a hostage release, which he said could pave the way for a full halt to fighting.
U.S. President Joe Biden said that Israel's war in Gaza should end. He added that he was renewing efforts for a ceasefire after Egypt proposed a 2-day truce.
Now, furthermore, PM Netanyahu, during an address at the opening of the Knesset winter legislative session, said Israel severely damaged Iran's defense systems and its ability to export missiles in its airstrikes on Saturday. He added that the Israeli military hit hard on industrial factories of death.
I would like to emphasize these were not workshops that we attacked. These are not small explosive laboratories, as you know, from Judea and Samaria or the Gaza Strip. These are industrial death factories on an industrial scale, and we dealt them a real blow.
In other development, Israeli airstrikes hit the southern Lebanese city after the IDF called for residents in the ancient coastal city to evacuate, while Hezbollah rockets continue to rain down across northern Israel.
The Lebanon's health ministry said at least 60 people, including 2 children, were killed in Israeli raid on several areas in the eastern Bekaa Valley. The toll covered 12 areas in Baalbek region where Hezbollah holds sway, and rescue efforts are still underway. Over 1,700 people have been killed in Lebanon since the Israel-Hezbollah war erupted late last month.
All right, for more on this, we're now being joined by Dr. Malcolm Davis, live from Canberra. He is a senior analyst in Defence Strategy and Capability, Australian Strategic Policy Institute, joining us on the broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us on World DNA, sir.
It's my pleasure.
Sir, Israel has banned the UNRWA from operating in the country. Obviously, this is going to have a bearing on delivery of aid in Gaza as well. It's brought widespread condemnation. This at a time when a ceasefire is being negotiated as well. How do you assess the extent of the impact of this decision?
Look, I think from Israel's perspective, they have real concerns about UNRWA's association with Hamas in Gaza. And so they're concerned about UNRWA's role in terms of assisting or facilitating Hamas operations there. But from the other perspective, from the international community's perspective, the concern has to be getting aid to the Palestinian people as much as possible. That aid has to be distributed in a way that ensures Hamas cannot hijack that aid and use it for themselves. So I think that essentially banning UNRWA is probably not the smartest thing they could have done in this regard. What needed to happen was greater Israeli oversight over how UNRWA operates, to make sure that there is no assistance between UNRWA and Hamas, and to make sure that Hamas cannot hijack aid, and to ensure that it gets to the people that need it the most, which is the Palestinian people.
Right, Dr. Davis, now, U.S. had threatened to cut off its flow of weapons in Gaza if the aid does not reach or they don't speed up the aid delivery. Now that they've banned UNRWA, which was one of the sources to supply aid to Gaza, do you think U.S. will take any action?
Look, I doubt it. We are literally less than 10 days away from a critical U.S. presidential election. If the Biden-Harris team were to be seen to cut off military assistance to Israel at this crucial point, they would have profound domestic electoral impacts on Harris's chances of winning the presidential election. So I don't see any actual real response from the US, such as cutting off the aid. But certainly I think you will see criticism coming out of the Biden administration against Israel for doing this. And the Israelis will listen and nod their head and then get on with the job that they're doing.
Right. And now, Doctor, just to expand on that a little, Mossad chief has returned from talks in Doha as well. The new framework integrates, that's what the Israeli Prime Minister's office is saying, that this new framework integrates previous proposals. It takes into account the main issues and recent developments in the region. That being said, we see this defiance from the Israeli side, as we are in this case as well. Not much has changed on ground. We're seeing exchange of fire between Iran and Israel as well. That being said, do you think this is conducive to ceasefire negotiations or a possible deal?
Well, firstly, I think it's in Iran's interest not to retaliate against Israel's airstrikes the other day. The Iranian air defenses are essentially now non-existent, certainly non-functional. So Iran is wide open to any Israeli retaliation against an Iranian response. And that Israeli retaliation would be on a much higher level than what we saw just a few days ago. So Iran should hold back from any retaliation. I think, on the other hand, Israel now has an opportunity to actually work towards some sort of ceasefire agreement that would see the release of the hostages and some sort of truce that would allow a de-escalation. But ultimately, that ceasefire has to turn into a permanent peace that then ensures that groups like Hamas and Hezbollah cannot reconstitute and once again threaten Israel. So that would require some sort of agreement for a multinational peacekeeping force in Gaza, for example, or in southern Lebanon, that could then make sure that hostile forces such as Hamas and Hezbollah do not come back into the territory and then once again rearm and pose a threat against Israel.
All right, Dr. Malcolm Davis, thank you so much for joining us on the show and giving your insights.
Thank you.
Now, moving on, Israel and Iran exchanged barbs at the United Nations Security Council's emergency meeting on Monday.
Right, and Iran condemned Israel's Saturday attack, with the country's UN ambassador, Amir Said, calling it a blatant and dangerous breach of international law and the UN Charter.
He highlighted U.S.'s unwavering and unconditional support to Israel, as well as its obstruction of the Security Council mandate as a permanent member, and claimed it has emboldened the Benjamin Netanyahu-led country to persist in its crime and aggression in Gaza and Lebanon, and now in Iran.
This will be a different kind of war, because Hamas is a different kind of enemy.
The U.S. government is complicit in Israeli aggression and will bear its consequences. Furthermore, the United States has already been complicit in the ongoing war crimes and genocidal campaign targeting civilian and civilian infrastructure both in Gaza and Lebanon. The vast majority of bombs Israeli drops on Gaza and Lebanon are U.S.-made.
Israel called Iran the puppet master behind Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon. Speaking of Iran's October 1st launch of at least 180 missiles into Israel, its UN ambassador Danny Danon claimed the country promised destruction. Israel responded with strength, he said.
No sovereign country would tolerate hundreds of ballistic missiles aimed at its civilian population. No responsible government would allow its people to remain under constant threat. On Friday night, Israel acted as any nation would to defend its citizens, secure its borders, and neutralize an immediate threat.
The U.S. warned Iran of severe consequence if it undertakes any further aggressive action against Israel or U.S. personnel in West Asia.
Our message for Iran remains clear as well. Should it choose to undertake further aggressive acts against Israel or U.S. personnel in the region, there will be severe consequences. We will not hesitate to act in self-defense.
Russia and China sided with Iran, blaming Israel for the escalation in tensions in the region.
Now, UK took a more neutral stance, calling on all sides to exercise restraint.
And for more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani has sent us this report from New York. Listen to this.
The United Nations Security Council held an emergency meeting on a Monday afternoon to address escalating tensions between Iran and Israel. This comes after those Israeli airstrikes targeted Iranian missile factories over the weekend, prompting Iran to now consider a response to those attacks. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called for an immediate halt to all attacks in the region, while the U.S. representative to the United Nations emphasized on Monday that all acts of escalation are condemnable and must stop. The situation began to unfold on October 1st when Iran launched nearly 200 ballistic missiles targeting Israel at Tel Aviv. Israel's ambassador to the United Nations on Monday directly addressed Iran's leaders, saying this is the last warning. Israel has shown restraint, but from now on, you will only see strength, and any further aggression will be met by quote-unquote powerful and swift actions. The international community continues to call for de-escalation to the situation in the Middle East as the events unfolding in the region paint an uncertain future for any prospects of peace, at least for now. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.
The Pentagon will not impose new limits on Ukraine's use of American weapons if North Korea joins Russia's war.
And this comes as the U.S. on Monday said that North Korea has sent 10,000 troops for training in Russia, tripling the previous estimate of 3,000 troops.
President Joe Biden said the deployment of North Korean troops in Russia was a dangerous development amid Western fears that the troops will be used in Moscow's war against Kyiv.
What about North Korea? 1,000 troops now? It's very dangerous. Very dangerous. And, the idea that Kamala's opponent is talking to Putin and discussing what should be done, I mean, it's good at any market.
NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte also confirmed the presence of North Korean troops in Russia. He also said that some units have been deployed to the Kursk region, calling the move a significant escalation in Pyongyang's military aid to Russia.
Today, I can confirm that North Korean troops have been sent to Russia and that North Korean military units have been deployed to the Kursk region. The deployment of North Korean troops represents, one, a significant escalation in the DPRK's ongoing involvement in Russia's illegal war. Two, yet another breach of UN Security Council resolutions. And three, a dangerous expansion of Russia's war. NATO calls on Russia and the DPRK to cease these actions immediately.
Now, the United States has also expressed its concerns to Chinese authorities over the deployment of North Korean soldiers.
The Kremlin had initially dismissed reports about a North Korean deployment as fake news. But Russian President Vladimir Putin on Thursday did not deny North Korean troops were in Russia and said that it was Moscow's business how to implement a partnership treaty with Pyongyang.
As for our relations with the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, as you know, our strategic partnership treaty was ratified only today. There is Article 4, and Russia never doubted that the DPRK is serious about the Russian cooperation. But what we will do and how we will do it is our business.
Experts have said that in return for the troops, North Korea is likely aiming to acquire military technology ranging from surveillance satellites to submarines, plus possible security guarantees from Moscow.
Now, meanwhile, North Korea's Foreign Minister Cho Song-hui is on her way to Moscow. This is her second trip to Russia in 6 weeks amid rising concerns about Pyongyang's involvement in Moscow's war in Ukraine. All right, we are just a week away from the U.S. presidential elections.
Well, let's take a look at the stories that are shaping the race to the White House this time. President Joe Biden has joined more than 45 million American voters who've cast early ballots in person or via post in this election so far. Biden cast his early ballot at a polling center in Newcastle on the outskirts of his hometown of Wilmington, Delaware. Asked afterwards if it had been a bittersweet moment to vote in an election he once hoped to win, the 81-year-old told reporters, and I'm quoting here, "This is sweet."
First-time voter.
Mr. President, do you want to...
Oh, this is just sweet. I think we will.
And Donald Trump has said that he is not a Nazi, pushing back on critics' accusations that the Republican is seeking to be an authoritarian American leader. The former president made the comments during his latest campaign stop in the swing state of Georgia. Trump's comment come after Harris attacked the former president as she addressed his reported praise for Adolf Hitler.
And yet they use that word freely, both words. They use it, he's Hitler. And then they say, he's a Nazi. I'm not a Nazi. I'm the opposite of a Nazi. I don't know. Still.
Donald Trump's camp was working hard to contain a fierce backlash to racist rhetoric targeting Puerto Ricans at his weekend rally. While residents of Puerto Rico and American island territory in the Caribbean cannot take part in U.S. elections, the diaspora living in the United States numbers almost 6 million and is eligible to vote. They could have significant sway in critical battleground state of Pennsylvania, which has the fourth largest concentration of Puerto Ricans. Residents after Florida, New York and New Jersey. During the rally, comedian Tony Hinchcliffe joked about the territory being a floating island of garbage.
All right, it's now time for a quick break, but don't go anywhere.
Lots more lined up for you on the other side on World DNA. To begin with, India and Spain sought to bolster their ties as Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his Spanish counterpart Pedro Sanchez held delegation-level talks. More details on the other side. Stay tuned for that.
Also on the other side, former Bangladeshi Prime Minister Sheikh Hasinas is being turned into a museum. This comes as part of interim government's measure to honor the revolution that ousted her. All that on the other side.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
The US race to power, marked by high-octane campaign rallies, life-threatening encounters, game-changing presidential debates, the color and the drama, the key defining moments, deep insights and informed analysis. Watch continuous coverage of the US presidential elections 2024 on WION World is One.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
WION brings you a special business talk show where we bring forth the stories of business leaders.
From breakthrough technologies to visionary leadership, we will unlock the trends, the tactics, and dive into the minds of the industry's most influential leaders.
WION brings you this special series to uncover what drives them in a candid talk show, WION Business Masters.
There is no master plan ready. They don't know the exact number of the people residing who are eligible, who are not eligible.
The model that SRA has adopted for Dharavi is flawed, it is wrong, it is bound to fail.
धारावी एक ऐसी झोपड़पट्टी है कि शायद उसको हम कहें इंडस्ट्रियल स्लम। सारे लोग अपने अपने घर में अपनी रोजी रोटी का इंतजाम कर रहे हैं, उनका क्या होगा?
The infrastructure, the experience, the capacity of Adani, it is visible and it is already started.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the U.S. And I will be here at the WION headquarters, getting you all the action from the universe of sport. All that you need to know about your favorite teams and players, right here.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of.
A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA.
Join the conversation.
Thanks for staying with us. Welcome back. You're watching World DNA with me, Jyotsna Kumar, and my colleague Kim Corsoya. Let's start with the headlines.
The Washington Post owner Jeff Bezos defends decision to not endorse any candidate in the US presidential race via op-ed article. The statement comes after 3 members of the editorial board resigned over the decision.
Israel's parliament approves bill banning the main UN aid agency in Gaza from operating in Israel and East Jerusalem despite objections from the international community.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he's not received a proposal for a 2-day truce in Gaza, but says Israel was mulling proposed talks on hostage release deal after Mossad chief met mediators in Doha.
Pentagon will not impose new limits on Ukraine's use of American weapons if North Korea joins Russia's war, as U.S. claims North Korea has sent 10,000 troops to train in Russia.
Armies of India and China complete 80 to 90% disengagement at Depsang and Demchok in Ladakh. Process includes removal of all types of infrastructure and troop pullback.
India and Spain sought to bolster their ties as Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his Spanish counterpart Pedro Sanchez held delegation-level talks.
In a major boost to defence ties, Indian Prime Minister Modi and Sanchez inaugurated a new joint Tata Airbus factory in the western Indian city of Vadodara. The factory, which will see the manufacture of C-295 maritime patrol aircraft for the Indian Air Force, it's a flagship Make in India initiative in the aviation sector. The project is a collaboration between Tata Advanced Systems and Airbus Spain.
एयरबस और टाटा की इस फैक्ट्री से भी भारत में हजारों रोजगार का निर्माण होगा। इस प्रोजेक्ट के कारण एयरक्राफ्ट के 18,000 पार्ट्स की इंडिजीनियस मैन्युफैक्चरिंग होने जा रही है। देश के किसी हिस्से से एक पार्ट मैन्युफैक्चर होगा तो देश के किसी दूसरे हिस्से में दूसरा पार्ट मैन्युफैक्चर होगा। और ये पार्ट बनाएगा कौन? हमारे माइक्रो और स्मॉल इंडस्ट्रीज ये काम करने वाले हैं।
India formalized the acquisition of 56 Airbus C-295 aircraft in September 2021 to replace the aging fleet of other aircraft of the Indian Air Force. 16 aircraft are to be delivered in flyaway condition from Spain, while the remaining 40 aircraft will be made in India.
In 2026, the first C-295 manufactured in India will produce by this plant in Vadodara. This aircraft, it is a symbol of the Spanish and European aeronautical industry. In addition to contributing to modernizing India's defense capabilities, it will also drive technological development, particularly for the state of Gujarat, India's leading manufacturing hub.
The two leaders held delegation-level talks at the iconic Lakshmi Vilas Palace in Vadodara. The meeting underscored the strengthening of bilateral ties between India and Spain. Both the leaders discussed key areas of cooperation, including trade, defense and cultural exchanges.
Sanchez, on a 3-day visit to India. This is the first such visit by a Spanish head of state in 18 years. Prime Minister Modi visited Spain in 2017 and held talks with Sanchez at the G20 summits in 2018 and 2021.
As Prime Minister, Sanchez holds the title of the President of Spain's government. Upon his arrival in Vadodara, Prime Minister Modi and Sanchez held a roadshow.
Both leaders inaugurated the Bharat Mata Sarovar at Amreli and laid the foundation stone for various development projects worth over $500 million.
Pedro Sanchez will also visit Mumbai, where he will meet industry leaders, think tanks and Bollywood stars. He will also address the 4th India-Spain Forum organized by the Spain-India Council Foundation.
Several MOUs are expected to be signed during the visit as both countries look forward to deepen the bilateral partnership in trade, infrastructure, defense and biotech, among other sectors.
हम भारत और स्पेन की पार्टनरशिप को नई दिशा दे रहे हैं.
Now, the official residence of former Bangladeshi Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is now being turned into a museum.
Now, the announcement made by interim government chief advisor Mohammad Yunus said the step is one of the measures to honor the revolution that ousted her. Hasina's 15-year autocratic rule saw widespread human rights abuses, including mass detention and extrajudicial killings of her political rivals. A Bangladeshi court has now issued an arrest warrant against her to answer to those charges.
Following the widespread student protests that saw over 700 people killed in a major unrest, Hasina fled the country. Thousands stormed her residence. The walls of the palace, looted and damaged in the chaos after Hasina escaped, are now smeared with graffiti condemning her fallen regime.
The palace turned museum will also include a replica of the House of Mirrors Aina Ghar detention center operated by Hasina's regime. As the name suggests, the detainees were never supposed to see anyone else besides themselves. Yunus said Aina Ghar should remind visitors of the torture endured by the prisoners.
Sheikh Hasina's overthrow resulted in at least 2 days of chaos that included the looting of a museum at the home of her father, Bangladesh's first president, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. Hasina has not been seen in public since fleeing Bangladesh. The 77-year-old's last official whereabouts was a military airbase near India's capital, New Delhi.
All right, China has announced a new set of family planning and parenting initiatives.
This is aimed at reversing its declining birth rate after 2 years of population contraction.
The State Council, China's cabinet, is promoting a new culture of family values, emphasizing respect for parenthood, timely marriage, and shared childcare responsibilities.
To support families, new measures include better maternity insurance, longer maternity leave, childcare subsidies, and additional medical resources.
Local governments have been encouraged to fund childcare centers and offer tax incentives to ease family costs.
There is also focus on education aid for disadvantaged students and housing support for families with multiple children, plus safeguards for pregnant women at work.
In a push to help young people connect, the Council will also promote non-commercial social platforms to foster relationships. This announcement comes after recent surveys on attitudes towards family life as China works to tackle its low birth rate and population decline.
Now, the melting of the Arctic Sea has set alarm bells ringing.
The climate scientists say it could make Europe shiver besides disrupting ocean circulation.
Now, a study by Mohammad Azad from the IC3 Polar Research Hub has revealed alarming implications of Arctic sea ice melt on the global climate patterns. The research published in Nature Communications suggests that increased freshwater inflow from melting Arctic sea ice into the Nordic seas could significantly disrupt ocean circulation and lead to cooling in northern Europe.
The findings indicate that the melting Arctic sea ice has altered water salinity and density. It has also disrupted normal current flows and heat disruption across the ocean. All this has significant implications for future climate scenarios as ice-free summer conditions are expected in the Arctic Ocean from 2050 onwards.
Now, the concentration of planet-heating pollutants clogging the atmosphere hit record levels in 2023. This despite climate change warnings issued by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change since 1990. Global emissions have continued to rise in the last decade, reaching their highest point in history.
The result, global emissions are on track to blow past the 1.5 degrees Celsius warming limit envisioned in the 2015 Paris Agreement. Now remember, the Nordic seas situated between Greenland and Norway play a crucial role in oceanic heat transport and influence weather patterns globally. Any changes in this region could have far-reaching consequences.
The study emphasizes the importance of feedback mechanisms in climate system and the potential for disruption, abrupt changes as the Arctic continues to warm. The present research comes amid growing concerns from climate scientists about the risk of major changes in the Atlantic Ocean circulation due to climate change. Scientists say understanding these complex interactions is crucial for predicting and potentially mitigating future climate impacts.
Pakistan is moving to finalize the long-delayed privatization of its national airline.
This along with the outsourcing of Islamabad International Airport by November 2024.
Now, Finance Minister Mohammad Aurangzeb announced this timeline during the World Bank's annual meetings in Washington. Initially, the government aimed to complete the privatization by June 2024, but this has been postponed by 5 months. Aurangzeb cited the need for macroeconomic stability and through due diligence on potential buyers as key reasons for the delay. He emphasized that investors require a solid economic foundation before committing substantial funds.
Pakistan's economy has made notable strides in recent times. Last year, inflation peaked at 38% but has now decreased to under 7%. This is aided by high interest rates and import restrictions to conserve foreign reserves. The International Monetary Fund recently approved a $7 billion loan for Pakistan, marking its 24th loan since 1958. This deal is contingent on key reforms including the privatization of state-owned enterprises like PIA, expanding the tax base and overhauling the power sector.
Now, despite improvement, challenges remain. Pakistan's gross public debt stands at 69% of GDP, approximately $258 billion. The economy continues to grapple with issues of corruption and inefficiency. Only 5.2 million out of a population of over 240 million filed income tax returns in 2022, highlighting the urgent need for tax system reform.
However, Aurangzeb reported a 29% increase in tax revenue last fiscal year with expectations for a further 40% rise this year. As the government moves forward with its economic reform agenda, the focus will be on enhancing fiscal stability and encouraging broader participation in the tax system. And for decades, we've been accustomed to a world of exponential growth. But now a seismic shift is underway.
Right. And global population growth is slowing, and in some parts of the world, it's even declining. This isn't just a prediction, it's a reality unfolding before our eyes. Take a look at our next report to know more.
For the first time, projections show global population may peak in the 2060s at 10 billion, then begin to decline. In wealthier countries, this is already happening. Japan is seeing a net loss of 100 people every hour, while fertility rates in Europe, the US, and East Asia have fallen well below replacement levels. Meanwhile, middle-income nations like Brazil are seeing record low growth, marking a significant global demographic shift. Just a decade ago, projections estimated a possible rise to 12.3 billion by century's end, but now a slower growth trend is reshaping these forecasts. As more nations move from agrarian to industrial economies, birth rates have dropped sharply, particularly as women gain access to higher education and career opportunities, often delaying or choosing to have fewer children. For countries in demographic decline, the consequences are clear. Fewer workers, more elderly populations, and challenges in maintaining economic growth. China, once the world's most populous nation, is now expected to lose 2/3 of its population by 2100. This is driven partly by the long-term impacts of its one-child policy. Meanwhile, Japan is projected to halve its population by the end of the century. Environmentally, a declining population could mean reduced consumption, but it's not that simple. Older populations, especially in wealthier countries, tend to consume more resources and energy per capita, and emissions often increase as nations become wealthier. Migration trends are also shifting, with migration now surpassing previous forecasts as countries compete to fill workforce gaps. Environmentalists who once advocated for population control now see a natural decline, yet warn that without major shifts in consumption patterns and emission cuts, a falling population alone won't reduce environmental pressures. As population growth slows, the next challenge is balancing these dynamics for a sustainable future. Business Bureau WION World is One.